You're listening to Prosper in the Kingdom, the podcast where faith meets practical strategies to help you become healthy, wealthy, and wise. Join hosts John Cleaver and Wendy Lee as they share insights to equip you in your journey toward abundance, spiritually, financially, and beyond. Just a reminder, every situation is unique. The content of this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as specific financial or medical advice.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Prosper in the Kingdom. And I cannot believe it is already the 23rd of March. Q1 is almost over in 2026. My grandma was right. It flies by faster and faster with each passing year. So,
yeah, in fact, we're actually 2 days beyond the date you just said.
Are we really? Oh my gosh, that tells you the kind of the date I'm having, right? I don't even know what day it is. So it's not early onset, guys. I'm just stating that for a fact. It's not early onset. I know what you're insinuating, Wendy. Jeez, no. Tough love. So we're not here to talk about the dates. We're not here to talk about early onset with John. What we're here talking about today, obviously, we're here to bring you some financial information. We're dealing specifically with millennials today. And the topic is why millennials are falling behind financially. And it's not just an opinion, it's actual factual based on data from the Fed. So again, welcome back to Prosper in the Kingdom. Our whole goal here is to help you to become healthy, wealthy, and wise through our 3M framework to teach you how to better make money, manage it, and multiply that. So, looking at the millennials and anyone watching that what's going on with generation, if you're listening and you're a millennial, we're going to be kind of talking a little bit about boomers and Gen X. That's my generation. And Wendy, are you a millennial or a Gen X?
I'm the last year of Gen Xers.
Got it. So you got in there. Okay. All right. Well, here's the reality of it. Millennials are behind. If you look, at a comparison at same age in those three generations, they're behind. And it's not because they're lazy, right? I know, they just don't want to. No, it's not because they're lazy. They're very creative. They're not careless either. But they are, like I said, on average, kind of falling behind the eight ball. And, depending on what data sheet you looked at, I looked at a lot of data, because I don't like to just throw stuff out there and just, it's an opinion, right? No, based on the Fed data, right? Millennials are roughly 20 to 40% behind on wealth than their peers or their counterparts in Gen X and the baby boomers at that same age, right? So that's a big, big gap. And again, that's from the data. That's hard data. So the real question, and we're going to talk a little bit about this today. We've got a special guest on as well that I'm excited to introduce. But the question is why, and more importantly, what can they do about it, right?
Yeah. So like John said, this is not just opinion. It's actual real data. So the Federal Reserve comparing people in their late 30s and early 40s, like looking at Gen X in that time frame, they had about 132,000 median net worth. And so the millennials are about 91,000. So that is a 30% gap. Now, the millennials have made progress. They are closing that gap as they age, but they're still playing catch up. And, I think even we've seen, John, that Gen X is even behind for retirement compared to boomers, like quite drastically. Yeah. So the fact that millennials are even further behind, things have to change, right?
Yeah.
We've got to make some moves. So.
Or not, or if not, we're going to have some communal living going on. So, but again, the longer they stay behind, the harder it's going to be to catch up. And that goes for Gen Xers as well. But the top 5 reasons, okay, so let's just talk about this. It's not make-believe, these are real issues going on. And, when I first started digging in, of course, I'm an older Gen Xer, school of hard knocks, right? It's like, they just don't want to say it. They just, whatever, quit whining, just go do it. No, there's real data behind them. So millennials, I want to formally apologize to all of you because there's some real stuff going on. Number one, student loans. We partnered with companies that help our clients get qualified for student loan forgiveness. And this is on federal debt. So if you have federal debt, reach out to us. But schools have gone up tremendously in cost for college education, and it seems like more and more that student loan debt has just exploded because students look at it as a way to live, and I can't get a job, so I'm just going to go directly from my bachelor's degree to my master's degree, pull out more money to live that lifestyle, thinking, whatever, I can pay it back with my job. But you walk out of there with 100, 200. I've even seen people coming out with almost, not quite, but almost $300,000 in student loan debt for a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
And it's not difficult to do if you're changing your majors a few times. You're on the 7-year program and you finally graduate and you walk out of the tremendous debt. So that's a reality, and that changes everything from day one as a quote unquote adult. I've got my college degree, now I'm going into the workforce, but it blows up cash flow. It's the risk tolerance, and the investment ability is severely diminished just because they got to pay the student loan debts, right?
Yeah.
The second one, and this is a big one, and I've talked to my oldest son. He's a Gen Z, right? And they're kind of the same thing, but it's the delayed home ownership. I know millennials have bought houses, but typically they're waiting, or a lot of them have opted not to necessarily buy a house and just rent because they think of, it gives me so much more freedom and I don't want a mortgage, so I'm just gonna pay rent. Well, here's the reality of that. Number one, real estate historically has been the biggest wealth builder, right? It's not crypto, it's not gold, it's not silver, it's not buying, that stock at a penny stock and it blows up to $1,000 a share. It's real estate, because that's a steady Eddie. Number one, it's people always need a place to live. And here's the reality of it, right? That comment, I don't want a mortgage, I'm just going to rent. Well, whether you rent or whether you buy a property, you're still paying a mortgage.
Yeah.
When you buy a property, you get all the benefits, all the tax benefits, all the equity benefits, and everything else, right? And you get the fact that your mortgage payment typically is not going to go up during the entire period you live there. However, if you rent, guess what? You're still paying a mortgage, but it's the landlord's mortgage you're paying. Okay. So keep that in mind. And if you're paying, $2,000, $2,500, somewhere in there for rent, depending on what market you're in, that's a $350,000 house you could be buying. Look at getting an FHA if down payment's a problem, or, if it's rural USDA loans. There's all kinds of things you can do, but start snatching that equity, right? And because millennials have entered later and at higher prices, because we had the big migration from the coasts inward, a lot of millennials got left behind on that. So that's number two, is that delayed home ownership. Number three, and this was also the same thing for Gen X as well, entering the workforce at a bad time, right? 2008, not a good year. Okay. And that hit right as millennials were kind of launching their careers, which means lower wages early, long-term compounding loss. So, that's been a big factor as well. Now, a lot of them, and this is something I give feather in the cap to millennials, is they're out doing side hustles, getting creative. A lot of entrepreneurs, in my opinion, millennials have really brought back that entrepreneurial spirit, whether that's just couldn't get a job, or I just don't want to work, a 40-hour work week for somebody else, controlling my time. Doesn't matter. They're bringing the entrepreneur lifestyle back. But it's just a matter of, that's a challenge in and of itself, which we're not going to go into. So that's number three, that 2008 hit at the crappiest time for millennials. And then number four, cost of living versus income growth. I was looking at some charts and things like that, and the last administration, not naming names, I'm just naming numbers, right? Our inflation got up to 9.5%.
Yeah.
9.5% year on year. And it wasn't low before that. I mean, there were several years of that crazy growth. And unfortunately, that inflation doesn't go back down.
Right.
Right. It doesn't drop. Once it goes up, it stays up. And then you may slow it down the next year, which, thank God we have an administration now we're hovering around 2.7. And again, these are all the same numbers coming from the same source, the Fed. So question mark there. But the cost of living is just outpaced income growth, which again, created that need for the side hustles and things like that. And lastly, and this is the big one, right? And I don't think this is exclusive to millennials, but it's the lack of the financial structure, right? Most millennials, and same thing with Gen X, and I think the same thing with boomers too, save 10% of your income and you'll be fine, right? So people lock onto that.
Yeah.
And truth be told, most people aren't even saving 10%. They'll get 6%, 5% on a company match on a 401k. That's what they do, and they just set it and forget it. That might work if you start religiously saving that at age 22, but in reality, it doesn't work at 30, 35 years old, right? In reality, you need to be saving about 25%, I think.
Well, and here's the thing too, is like you just said, our last administration, we had inflation at 9%. So when you think 10%, you're just like maintaining to have money saved at retirement, and you're not accounting for inflation at that point, right? It's not getting you ahead at all. And so really, like John, you just said, right, that 25% going towards wealth building is essential. And most people, I mean, how many people do we talk to that you talk about putting $500 a month away and they're like, oh, 500, 1,000 a month is when really they need to be putting away more than that, 2,000.
Well, it depends on, you've got to keep things in scale, right? But yeah, I mean, that 25%, if you can't do it day one, don't just throw up your hands and say, oh, I can't do it. Start somewhere, but know that ultimately you need to be, and it's not, and I want to stress what you said too. You said towards wealth building. Okay. And that's critical because that's what we teach at PITK is how to build wealth, not just retirement. Right. And that's what you, the millennial or Gen X or boomer, needs to focus on is I want to build wealth. I want to build liquidity so I can take advantage of opportunities. And at the end of the day, it's all your money. But, that old advice, 10%, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's not going to cut it. And that's why, we have all these side hustles and all these different jobs that people do, which is awesome. But all the time we talk to people that have the side hustle just to increase their lifestyle. I think sometimes it starts out as, hey, I'm going to use this to pay off debt, but then they have some success. And then it's like, okay, now increase the lifestyle and then switch and leave the job to build the business. And really, I mean, I go back to Jim Rohn all the time. He's one of my favorite trainers and mindset people I've ever listened to. And he has this where he talks about when he started his side hustle. He's like, I waited until my side hustle income doubled my full-time income before I walked away.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, but having that, if you do have the side hustles, like put that towards wealth building. Don't put it towards lifestyle increase. Right. And figure out how to structure, right? Because we got to talk about taxes, liquidity, growth, and protection. It's not just, I get to spend more money on stuff that doesn't matter.
Well, and that's the thing you got to look at. And I just had this conversation with a client this past weekend. That revenue you bring in, the income, right? Or incomes, plural, which is what you should be focused on. That's going to create margin. And that margin is like seed, right? It's like seed for a garden or whatever. Most people eat their seeds like birds, right? They eat all the seed, maybe have a few left over and they put that in the ground to plant. You've got to shift that and, okay, let's plant, a quarter of our seed. Let's plant that in the ground, then we eat the rest. I mean, that's, you're paying your taxes on that, your tithe and your generosity and things like that. And you budget to live on that. Spending plan. That's another video. Watch that. But, it's a challenge not only for boomers and Gen X, but millennials specifically because of all the reasons we've talked about, right? So the question is, okay, I get it, John. I'm a millennial. I know this stuff. So what do I do about it? So here's some things that you can kind of action items, right, that you can put in play. Number one, like what he was just talking about, increase that income intentionally, not randomly, but strategically, right? Look at your skills. Can you pick something, a side hustle on Upwork or Fiverr or something like that? If you're doing graphics or if you're good at something in voiceovers, you got a great voice, you can do voiceovers, all kinds of things, but, create some positioning and leveraging. If you've got a unique skill that maybe you're not using anymore, don't let that skill kind of get rusty. Find a way to do some consultant work on the side or get plugged into, Wendy's got a big network marketing background. A lot of good ones, a lot of bad ones, right? Find a good one that does great training, good products, and start plugging in. I mean, even if you're making $500 or $1,000 a month, that's an extra $500 or $1,000 a month. You can start slamming towards building your wealth, right? And being, intentional and generational about it. Number two is control that lifestyle expansion. Literally just talked about that. When new money comes in, what do we typically do? Oh man, look at me, I'm killing it. This is going to go on forever. And it doesn't, right? So we start spending it. Don't let that income get eaten up by increasing your expenses, right? Don't do it, right? This is where people get stuck. So just learn how to control. I mean, don't get me wrong, reward yourself a little bit, but not consistently with all of it, right? Take yourself out, steak dinner, celebrate, whatever the case may be. Because again, those are seeds. Those are stepping stones into wealth. A little more income, or maybe I did a project and sold it, or maybe I had a piece of property and sold it. Don't turn around and spend it. Oh, I'm going to pay off bills. Your tax return, that's getting ready to start happening, right? Don't turn around and pay off all your bills. Now, don't get me wrong. You want to be debt free, but have a plan and then take that big lump sum and grow it, turn it into something, right? And then as you're shifting, this is number three, is move towards that 25%, not retirement, wealth allocation, right? Find a way to get there. What would 25% of your income look like, and what would you be able to do with that? Start where you are, though. Don't get all stressed out about it and then throw your hands up. How do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. But continue to build towards that number. Number four, and this is critical, right? Use better structures. This is where people lose ground. They keep doing the old crap and just throwing money at it, think it's going to fix it. But, no, right? Not all dollars are created equal. Okay. You need to think about tax efficiency. You need to think about liquidity, because liquidity means you slap all your money in a 401k because they're giving you a match and you just don't know where else to go. That's cool. But guess what? You cannot touch that money without taxes and penalties before 59 and a half. So it's locked up. Okay. Put it into some other stuff that creates liquidity, where I've got instant access, but I still have protection. I'm still getting great growth. That's if you don't have somebody talk to us, this is the stuff that we coach on, or go back and watch our videos, listen to our podcast. High growth potential. I want that, right? I don't want some CD rate of return. I want high growth potential and obviously protection. Warren Buffett said it best. Rule number one about building wealth: don't lose money. Rule number two about building wealth: see rule number one. Okay. You're working hard, you're stacking it up. You want to make sure that, you're building on it. And at the end of the day, think like an owner, not a consumer, right? And that's a big problem with all generations. But, I think millennials suffer with it as well, is stop asking yourself, what can I buy? Ooh, what can I afford? What can I buy? What's the next toy I can buy? I just had a conversation on that about an Oculus. It's like, okay, I bought one and you used it once. It's like, what is that? Like $500, $600, something like that. Start asking yourself this question: what can I build? What can I build? That mindset shift changes everything. And don't get me wrong, at first it's going to be all, herky jerky, but you get it, right? You get it. So those are the 5 things to kind of step up to. So
Yep.
Next, I want to introduce our guest. And I'm going to bring in a gentleman by the name of Andrew Zinn. There he is right there, out of Nashville, Tennessee. He's worked with us for a while, and he's got the unique, status of being a millennial. So we thought, rather than the two old Gen X, old Gen Xer and the young Gen Xer, talking about what millennials do, let's hear it straight from the man, the millennial man. There you go.
Well, hey, Andrew, welcome to Prosper in the Kingdom podcast. I think you've been on here once before, right? Maybe.
I was supposed to be. I don't know. I never got that invite. Nah.
Well, then welcome. All right. So we're going to just shoot you some questions, and feel free to answer, like based on what you see and your peers and what's going on in the millennial
Rock and roll.
world.
I'm an open book.
Awesome. All right. So would you say, do you feel for you or in your generation that you're behind financially compared to what you thought you would be?
Yeah, I think growing up, we all think that we're gonna, conquer the world and everything's gonna be easy, and I'll have so much saved by this time, and life will just be
Yeah.
kind of working itself out. If you just put my balance sheet up there, I'd probably be ahead of most millennials. But when it comes to month spending, 3 kids under 10, that type of thing, it comes down to every single paycheck, just like most people out there in the millennial generation.
Kids are cheap, right, Andrew?
I'll tell you what, the further away you live from your parents, the more expensive kids seem to become. You don't have that free babysitting, that extra kind of pillow to cuddle up against.
Love that advice.
Free
babysitting.
So yeah, from a balance sheet perspective, I think a lot of people, I just happened to get lucky on when I built my house and moved to Tennessee about 13 years ago. So I've got most of my wealth tied up in my equity of my house. But other than that, I'd be just the same as everybody else, just living kind of month to month, making do. And the inflation has been absolutely killer. The cost of everything's just gone up, and that's what we're seeing today.
Well, and if I can just interject real quick, I mean, you heard it straight from, the millennial mouth, so to speak, the real estate. I mean, that's a key factor in building wealth. You need a place to live anyway. And I don't think you said it was luck. I don't think it was. I mean, there's a little luck involved. Don't get me wrong. But the fact you made that conscious decision, because I know in your previous state, you owned a home there too, sold it, moved here, and you use that equity to kind of jump up, as people do, right? You don't start with a Taj Mahal. You start with your starter home, your fixer upper, and then kind of build that sweat equity into it to the next house. So I think, again, don't sell yourself short, man. I don't think that was all luck. So,
yeah. So you had mentioned inflation. So what would you say, is that the biggest financial challenge that you've seen so far, or is it something else?
Well, there's inflation and then there's standard of living, right? I think millennials kind of got accustomed to having nice things and being around nice things, especially with parents in the boomer generation. They had the 80s and 90s boom. They were putting away money. The stock market was hitting 18, 19% per year. And so there was this little bit of a bubble that we were living in growing up, and we don't want to take a step back. Even though getting out of college, I was right 08, 09, getting out of college right there when the housing crisis happened. I thought I was going to be, a marketing degree, making $65,000, $70,000 a year. And it was a huge slap in the face when suddenly it was like $32,000, $35,000 per year. So that's starting off from behind right there.
Yeah.
But
I wouldn't even tell you what my first job paid.
A lot of people, though, they're house poor right now, right? They got in, if they were lucky enough to get into a house that they want to be in. A big portion of their budget every month is spent on the house, and then they're interest rate dependent now. The interest rates have jumped up from 2.5% to 5.5%, 6.5%, 7%, and so they don't have the mobility to move, because where are they going to move where they can actually jump up and improve? So
yeah,
I think
that's a big optic. I know when I bought my first house, and that was in 2000. Interest rates, a 30-year fix for great credit was 8%. And I did a 7-1 arm at 7% and got into it. But you're right. I think, the cost of living increases, the hit at 08, that's when you graduated, going into the workforce, combined with the fact that housing's gone up, and you get into that house. Now it's like, but what are your thoughts on, okay, hey, how can I leverage possibly, I've got equity in the house, maybe a home equity loan to go, not to spend or pay off bills, but to go and leverage that to jump into another property or something like that? Because property values now, especially in certain states that were, I think, overinflated, like Florida, and I'm kind of going off a little tangent here. What are your thoughts on creating revenue through real estate? Just real briefly, but as a wealth strategy.
So about 3/4 of the people I know at one time or another were a real estate agent or a referral agent for a real estate company like Keller Williams or one of those ones out there.
Yeah.
And no, I think equity is a dead asset. It only rises with whatever the value of your housing market is at for that time. And so I've never been a proponent, especially if you have a good interest rate, of paying your house off early, because you're just throwing money into something
I
that's
love that you said that. I love that you said that. Go ahead.
Any kind of leverage there is just gone. So yeah, you know, don't be smart. If you've got a good interest rate, you know, don't pay that mortgage off early. You know, put that money into something else where it can grow over time. And, you know, 25, 30 years from now, you'll have extra cash to put into other income properties, things like that. There's a lot of headaches dealing with real estate. I know you're familiar with that, having to find tenants and everything else. But for the right market, I mean, there's always opportunity in real estate, and they're not making any more land.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, love that. So I want to ask this question because I think it's an interesting one, and I want to say I'm the very end of the Gen X. My sister, who's 5 years younger, is a millennial. And even I want to comment on what you said about standard of living and like, because you grew up with a certain lifestyle. Even the 5-year gap between me and my sister is so funny because my parents, I was working at 14 years old.
Yep.
I paid when I had my first car, they gave me a piece of junk car as my first car, and I had to buy my next one. Right. And I paid my gas. When I went out to eat, I paid for it. Like I literally worked for everything that I had from 14 on, other than the roof over my head and the groceries in the house. My sister, just 5 years younger. I don't know why, but she didn't get a job right away. They gave her money, they gave her allowance, they bought her like 3 cars. Like, and I'm like, it's so interesting. But anyway, and I get like that growing up and like having all those things handed to you. And the millennials, unlike Gen Z, millennials got out of the house, went to college, went on their own, you know, whether they rented or bought. Whereas we're seeing Gen Zs just stay with the parents longer, which, you know, is if they're saving money, maybe that's a better route. But
not my Gen Zs.
Curious what advice you were given, if any, about money growing up, or what did you learn from your parents about money?
So let me backtrack on one point you just said. The difference between Gen X and millennials, I tell myself that I'm an elder millennial, even though I'm probably right smack in the middle. But I think it was just because the way I was raised, I generally kind of identify more with Gen X because, you know, millennials have this dependency on their parents that Gen X didn't. I mean, Gen X may have stayed in the house a little bit longer, although there's plenty of millennials still living into their 30s. We got to stop that, right? I mean, people need to get on and get living with life. The 20s are now just kind of this party time where you kind of go out and you date for fun and you don't date for marriage, and you blow a lot of money and wasted time. And really, time's the most valuable asset, especially when you're talking about compound interest. That's why millennials are feeling behind there. But yeah, when people come in from out of states with cash and whatnot, getting into the housing market, there's all these different things out there that make it more difficult for millennials to get out and get on their own. Fortunately for me, my parents were always big savers. They were very frugal with their money. And so I was always saving and doing things very early. And that's why I didn't get into a bunch of debt in college, other things, because I was out mowing lawns at age 11, you know, through senior year of high school. But, you know, overall, it was, save more than you make. You got to set aside 10% for the big guy. And more, that just doesn't make any sense. I mean, think about it. When retirement was for our grandparents, you know, they retire, live for 8 or 9 years, and then they pass away. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So maybe that's 10% of their lives. What are our expectations for retirement, right? We want to retire for like 25, 30% of our lives, which means really we're only working for about a third of it really hard before all of a sudden we expect to just back up into the same type of lifestyle we've been living during our working years. I don't think 10% cuts it. Even 25% doesn't even cut it anymore when you're talking about the inflation that we're still feeling from the last administration.
Yeah, no. Exactly.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, one more question, and then we'll wrap it up, unless you have something, John. But what would you say people are most confused about when it comes to building wealth for millennials?
I would think that it has something to do with all of the fads that are out there right now. You know, we have the most information available to us than ever before, but a lot of that information isn't good information. I think a lot of the elder millennials and Gen X were kind of brought up with, the nightly news. It was a bit more conservative on the financial things. And so we were taught to be a little bit more conservative, but that doesn't exist anymore. People are jumping on the next fad. There's huge FOMO. They don't want to miss out on whatever somebody else did that they saw short-term success for. It has a lot to do with our jobs as well. I mean, people are a lot less loyal to their employers than they used to be. You're not building up wealth in a 401k or a pension for 20, 30 years at the same company like you used to. People hop back and forth. And so, they're not building that wealth in the same manner. I mean, shoot, I'm invested in a fund that trades every single thing that Nancy Pelosi trades. And I just wish I had more money to keep putting in that fund. But there's definitely fads and things with technology out there that millennials should be taking advantage of. But then there's equally a whole bunch of bad information out there. And people are falling into those traps just the same as any other generation did.
Yeah. I think, to expand on what you're saying, like it's that short-sightedness. You said like I want to make money now. Everything, I don't know about y'all's Instagram or Facebook feed, but mine, it's like, and I'm like, does everyone see this? That everything is about how to make money now, how to make money quick, how to make money,
buy my course. Yeah.
Right. It's like, this is the way to make 10K in the next 30 days. This is the way. And it's like, oh my gosh, everybody, and everybody's just chasing making money instead of learning how to be a steward of what they have to open room for increase. And that's
building a plan right? So
and I want to say this but of all the things we've talked about, John, when you were kind of going through your list of different things, like for me, my light bulb moment, my aha moment in looking at money completely differently outside of what God's done in my heart was when I got my financial plan with you. And I saw, if I do this, this is what it will look like in 20, 30, 40 years, right? If I do this over the next 3, 6, 9 years, this is what it's going to turn into. Yeah. And it was something that I could do on my budget. And when people see that, I mean, we had a client who's actually doing business with coming on our team like a week ago, right? They're millennials and they aren't saving anything. And they saw what they could do with the plenty of money they have in their budget to put away. And it was a light bulb moment. Like, when we have the knowledge of what we can actually build and we can tie real numbers to it instead of, I should save more. Right. When you have a plan, it makes you want to take action. It makes you want to create the budget, the spending plan, so you can stay within that. And so like, hey, it's not immediate satisfaction. It's not, I'm going to have $1 million, in 3 years, but it's, that as I do this and as I move towards this plan and as I'm putting money away in 20 years, I'm going to be ahead of everyone else who just thinks that they're just,
and that's biblical too. So Proverbs, you go to the book of Proverbs, right, which is a great book for the how to live, right? Proverbs 13:11, wealth gained hastily will dwindle, but whoever gathers little by little will increase it. So, I mean, right there, exactly what you said, this whole, I want to build wealth, overnight or whatever. And then it doesn't work. So you get frustrated. Oh, no, it doesn't work for anything. No, you get a plan with some real numbers tied to it and just follow that plan consistently. Look what happens. And that's really what it's all about. So, kind of to close, here's the takeaway, right? Millennials didn't start on a level playing field. So I can see that. But the reality is you're here. Are you okay with just staying behind? And the answer should be no. No for you, your future you, your family, your children, your legacy, all of the above, right? So that's where it becomes a structure issue. So don't just hope it's all going to work out someday, right? Because every day, like Andrew said, every day that goes by, you're wasting that time, right? So, and it's also like when he was talking about, it's not about catching up overnight, right? It's about building the right system, staying consistent. So if you want help building that system, get your free Safe Money Roadmap, right? It's safemoneyroadmap.com. Fill in the little info sheet. One of our advisors will reach out to you, schedule some time with you. You've got myself, you've got Wendy, and you've got Andrew too, the Millennial Man, right? But if you want to go into deeper structure on how to set your money up for growth, protection, long-term control, and again, not just retirement, but actual wealth, make sure you're plugged into what we're doing. We've got our podcasts on multiple channels, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If you're listening on there, please do us a favor, subscribe and give us a 5-star, thumbs up. If you're following our YouTube channel, share that post, or if you see us somewhere else, we've got articles that we post, everything, all about teaching you how to make, manage, and multiply your money. And that's what we're all about here at Prosper at the Kingdom. So let us know if you need help going deeper, and we'll see you next week on another Prosper in the Kingdom. Andrew, I want to give you a special shout out. Thank you for being our guest today. It always makes it a little more fun when we've got a guest to get their perspectives. So I hope to have you on here again sometime. So bye, everybody, and we'll see you next week on Prosper in the Kingdom.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Prosper in the Kingdom. If this episode added value to your day, be sure to like and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with someone who could use the encouragement. For more resources, head to prosperinthekingdom.com. Let's continue building lives of purpose and abundance, one step at a time.